Good morning. Before you is our reference drawing, and I want to walk you through it to show you what we're going to do today. What we intend to do is to complete all of the upper cabinets. Now, what is an upper cabinet? An upper cabinet is any cabinet whose story stick points do not exist on the red-green plane. So if you elevate a story stick point off of the red-green plane, what you are drawing is an upper cabinet by definition. Now you're going to look at this refrigerator cabinet and you're going to think that it was drawn on the red-green plane, but it wasn't. It actually is going to be drawn by placing story stick points here, 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 and here. And then, with an option, choose to extend these sides all the way to the floor. But the refrigerator cabinet is indeed an upper cabinet. Another little anomaly we have is this cabinet right here. There are no doors. It's a poor man's bookshelf, if you will. And it's particularly handy in a kitchen where you have a lot of cookbooks that you might want to store. To get this bookcase, you simply use a standard upper cabinet with no doors and choose the number of shelves that you might want. Over here, we have a corner cabinet. Actually, if I select this corner cabinet, we find it's actually a cabinet with two boxes, a corner box and a standard upper. Here's a standard upper. One box, it's a one box cabinet. This also is a one box cabinet. This here looks like a three box cabinet, but in fact, this box is its own cabinet. This box is its own cabinet. And this box is its own cabinet. What I've done here is I've edited the face frame to make it look like one cabinet. And I'll show you how to do that. There are some tricky little things that you need to be aware of. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go back to our new drawing. Now, as I mentioned before, in the real world, you're going to sit in a client's kitchen and you're going to draw the walls, and you're not going to be given these construction lines and points. You're going to have to create them through a conversation with your prospective client to determine what kinds of cabinets and what size go where. But in this case, to save time on video, I've placed these from the finished drawing. So we're going to start right here. We're going to draw this cabinet first. And we're going to do it our usual way. I'm going to pick the story stick. Come out here. And I'm going to choose a left end panel. Here I'm going to choose a connector style. Because I'm going to have this refrigerator over here. Choose end. Accept all of these. And now this wants to be a standard upper. The default number of doors for a standard upper is 1. I want none. And I'll leave the rest the same. And there I have my book cabinet. Now, the refrigerator cabinet, I'm going to rotate around here a little bit. The refrigerator cabinet is right here. The height of this cabinet is dependent by the refrigerator's height. Its depth is also dependent on the refrigerator. The actual, what I should call the height of the cabinet is not this, but this is where the cabinet begins. It begins a little bit above the refrigerator. In this case, I believe it's 71 inches. The height of a refrigerator cabinet is going to be 24 inches, and its depth 26. And all of that is dependent on the refrigerator itself. So let's draw that in. Okay, now this is the left end, and I'm going to use a sheet. Typically, refrigerator cabinets have plywood sides, not panels. So I'm going to use a left end sheet. And over here, I'm going to use a right end sheet. I'll hit end. And the depth of my cabinet is going to be 26 inches. The height of the cabinet is going to be 24. I'll leave everything else the same for the moment. And it's going to be a refrigerator upper with 2 doors. By the way, this is the first time that I've mentioned this, but there is also a little checkbox here you can use if you want to force a cabinet to use left opening instead of right opening. But in this case, I've got 2 doors, so it makes no difference what I choose. But anyway, I'll leave the rest of this the way it is, and I'll say OK. And now I have my refrigerator cabinet. All right, now I want to draw this 2-box cabinet over here. This box is going to be a 2-door standard upper. And then there's going to be this corner cabinet here. Now the corner cabinet, the way we define those with the story stick is a little different. And I'll show you as we go along. But first let me start with my story stick. And I'll put the style in first. That's going to be a right end panel. Then I'm going to go all the way to this end, right here, in the corner. Now, that's the corner where the faces come together, the face frames. So I'm going to come out, click here. Must be on a construction point, so I'll choose here. And this time I'm going to use a left end or left pivot. Let me correct that. I'm going to use a left pivot connector. Now, there's a lot of things here. Left pivot connector. Let me explain each one of those separately. Left, because this is the left end of the cabinet. This is the right end of the cabinet. Pivot, because this point right here is going to be a point around which this inside point is going to pivot and end up over here. The inside point over here and the outside point over here will depend on the type of style I chose. And in this case, I chose a connector. So once I draw this next one, which will be a connector because this is a box and this is a box, we can then draw the cabinet. All right, so let me choose this one. I'll hit end. I'm going to accept everything here. All right, box number 1. This is box number 1. That's going to be a standard upper 2-door. and everything else will be the same. This is going to be a diagonal corner upper. One door. And again, I can choose to make this a left opening door if I wish. Otherwise, it'll be a right opening door. So there we go. We have our cabinet. Now, I want to mention something here before we draw this other cabinet in. There is a connector here. If I look at this, this is called the left corner connector. You can't see the connector over here, but that's what it is, a left corner connector. When I draw this cabinet in, I'm going to end up with a connector here too. And although in SketchUp I can draw them on top of one another, in the real world they can't exist on top of one another. So I'm going to have to do something about that. But I'll save all of that little stuff until the end. All right, so let's draw this cabinet in here. It's a very simple cabinet. I'll make this a left end connector. Make this one a right end connector. Hit end. Accept all of this. This is going to be a standard upper one door. And if we look here real close, we'll see that we have two connectors. We'll take care of that later. Now I can draw this one in here. This one's also very simple, so I'll draw that right away. And I notice I have two sets of dots here. I'm not sure why, but I'll choose one of them. We'll figure out which in a moment. So this is going to be a right end panel. Now I want my distance. All right, so this one, notice that one says, if I look in the lower left corner of the screen, that one says approximately 21 and 13/30 seconds. That one says 21 and 1/16. That's the one I believe, so I'm going to accept that one. And I'm going to make this a left end panel. I'll hit end. Accept that. Take a standard upper, one door. Okay. We have three more cabinets to draw. And remember I told you that these are individual one box cabinets. Before we draw them in, we want to think a little bit. They're going to be one box cabinets, but this one's going to be shorter than these two. And their sides are going to be exposed down here. Because I'm going to want to connect these three boxes, these styles will want to be connectors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use sheet sides for this cabinet and this cabinet. And just put connectors here. Let's see what happens. I can always edit the cabinet, so no big deal. So let's get started. That's a left end panel. Make that a right end sheet. Okay, or hit end rather. Accept all of that. This is going to be a upper, standard upper, one door. I'm going to do the same thing over here, but in reversed. So that'll be a right end panel. Left end sheet. And I'll make it I'll accept all that, make it a standard upper. One door. All right, now I'm going to draw this cabinet in. I should know well, let me measure the height of this. 27 inches. So let's draw that in. Left end connector. I've already got a sheet here, so I don't need another one. Right end connector. Hit end. I forgot what the dimension was that I measured. I think it was 27 inches, but I'm not sure. But I'll type in 27. We can always correct it. And I'll accept everything else. And this time it's going to be a standard upper, but with two doors. There we go. All right, now we have a similar situation here in that we got two connector styles, one over the other. We'll fix that. Same here. Now, this is basically all of our cabinets. Now the next thing I like to do is make any CabWriter edits that I need to make. These cabinets here were supposed to be 41-inch cabinets. I don't have to touch that one because I did that one right. But these want to be 41-inch cabinets. So I'll make that change next. The way I do that, go in here and edit this. Edit cabinet. The only thing I want to change is the height of the cabinet. I'm going to make it 41 inches. And I'll accept all of this. So all I did was I stretched that cabinet. I'm going to do the same to these three. Change it from 36 to 41. Don't change anything else. (36 to 41). Okay, because that was a 2-box cabinet, I only needed to type it, change that height once, and it changes the height of every box in the cabinet. All right, now, if you're pretty sure now at this point that this is what you want for cabinets, you're not going to be editing them very much, but you've got some customization to do, this is a good point to go ahead and do customization. However, if you think the client is still in flux, or you're pretty sure there's going to be some cabinet editing, especially cabinets where you want to customize them, I wouldn't do that until things settle down. Because every time you edit a cabinet or use the command File, CabWriter, redraw all cabinets, you lose all of your customization and you have to do it again. So you want to make sure that the client is pretty well settled. That being the case in this project, I'm going to make the customizations that I have to make. First place I'm going to start is simple. You remember that I have two styles overlapping each other here. One of them is part of the corner cabinet. Notice it's got a bevel here, but otherwise it's got the same amount of material, ends the same place that this one does. I need the bevel here. I need this piece of material, so the connector I'm going to get rid of is this one. Now, I can't delete it unless I unlock it. Now I can delete it. All right, that was a pretty harmless change. Now, for all intent and purposes, when I build this cabinet, I will have this connector, and it's going to replace the connector that is drawn by this cabinet. Let's see what other changes we have to make here. We have quite a few over here. So let's do those. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of that style and that style. The reason is those are short styles. They're the same as these styles. I don't need them, but I have to unlock them. Now I can delete them. Next thing I want to do is I want to make this look like one cabinet. So I'm going to delete that rail and that rail. I'm going to edit and shorten this one. And I'll bring it right down to there. Now I'm going to edit this one. I'm not using my thinking cap right at the moment. All right, now that looks like one cabinet with 3 boxes. I can do a couple of things with this down here. I can leave it as it is since I use sheet. I use sheet side, so I can leave that as is. And I think that's what I'll do. Now what I should do is lock all of this again. Just to protect myself. In fact, I'm going to do a select all. Yep, we're safe. Okay. Let's see if there are any other changes I need to make here. I don't think so. I'll just take a look around. Okay, that looks good. So I'm going to uncheck my construction points here. I don't need those anymore. Now, CabWriter comes with another plugin called Cutlass Bridge. So let's take a look at what Cutlass Bridge has been doing while we've been drawing cabinets. One of the dialog boxes that comes with Cutlass Bridge is the extended entity info. The extended entity info is basically, well, let me choose an entity here. Any entity, I'll choose that end panel, right? Well, let me choose that part right there. And notice up here the entity info tells you that that's a solid component one in model. It's a base end panels. It's part of a base, it's on the base end panels layer. It's a right end front style, and its definition name has a prefix for the cabinet number, right end front style. The extended entity info extends the information for that part to include the subassembly, which is basically, by the way, the prefix for the definition name, the fact that it's rough lumber maple, and that when we cut it, we want to cut it 1/32 of an inch thicker than final, and we want to cut the width 1/16 of an inch wider than final. So CabWriter is keeping track, is giving all of the information it needs to cut list, to make sure it keeps track of all of this information on the cut list. And we'll get to that shortly, and I'll show you what that looks like. And you can choose any part you want here, and you'll notice this changes for any part. Here's an interesting thing. Suppose I wanted to change all the external material on this design to something like cherry instead of maple. Here's what I can do. I'll clear all layers, and I'll bring back the face frames. Now watch what happens if I select all. Notice that in the extended entity info, the material used on all of these parts is rough lumber maple. If I wanted to change it to cherry, all I need to do is select rough lumber cherry. I've got to reselect rough lumber again, even though it was already selected. And I can now choose cherry. Now I can do that same thing with all of the other pieces, the end panels and what have you. But I need to be careful not to change the plywood portions of an end panel, for instance, to rough lumber cherry, but rather to plywood cherry. All right, I'm going to change this back. But that just gives you an idea how you can go about changing the material types in bulk. And you're able to do that because you can select various layers. Now we're going to cover an awful lot more of Cutlass Bridge and the extended entity info in future segments. Right now, there's just one thing I want to show you. Well, two things. If you go to the Setup tab, this is the setup that you want if you're working CabWriter projects. Assuming you have Cutlass plus FX, if you have Cutlass plus FX, And assuming you have the latest version 12.3.1, and you have Cutlass Bridge version 3 or 4, this legacy mode should be unchecked. However, if you have older versions of either of those pieces of software, then Cutlass Plus FX 12.3.1 or Cutlass Bridge 3 or 4, then you need to check this. The rest of these should be set up like this. The component numbering should be left up to CabWriter. Since Cutlass Bridge isn't doing the component numbering, it doesn't matter what this is set to, but I would suggest leaving it set to numerically. Info, this should be set to W, not W braces minus 1/2 or W10. What this will do will simply put 1, 2, or 3 letters in the info column, letting you know whether the width, thickness, or length of something has been resized. So leave it set to just W. The description, I won't explain this here, but just take my word for it. Leave it set to left side, not left side, angle brackets side. Left side. And subassembly should be left to model layer. All right. With that, one more thing I wanted to mention on the setup page. There are Popular Woodworking University has a course on Cutlass Bridge, which you can take. But also, Cutlass Bridge, if you just click down here for getting help, you can open the user's guide right here. The user's guide is 40 some pages, I believe, maybe even more. 60 pages. It tells you exactly how to use Cutlass Bridge for anything from designing cabinets to designing furniture, residential homes, you name it. So you can access that very easily right here with this button. All right. Now I want to bring back everything. This basically is our model. One of the things you want to do when you get to this point and you're pretty convinced that the model's been drawn, custom modifications have been made, and you're ready to prepare drawings for the build process, the manufacture process, one of the last things you want to do is use this little icon up here, which is numbering. What it does is it provides part numbers to all of the cabinets, but before it does that, it actually renumbers all the cabinets so that there are no missing integers, that they're all contiguous. What happens is when you're drawing cabinets using CabWriter, you often draw a cabinet, delete it, draw something else, or even edit cabinets. Editing cabinets will change the cabinet number. So one of the last things you want to do is simply click on this icon, and it will very quickly renumber all the cabinets and supply part numbers. So now if I go back and look at some of these things I've been working on, like this one, you'll note that in the Attributes tab, it has a component number, C525. In other words, this is Cabinet 5, Part 25. In addition to all the other attributes that it has here. Every part you choose will have that kind of nomenclature. Component number C14 cabinet C14 number, component number 13 in this case, right here. The subassembly that it assigns, the subassembly number that it assigns is simply the cabinet prefix number. So this is cabinet 14 upper box 2. Remember, this is one cabinet. This was the first box. This is the second box. Now, in the setup, we suggested that you use the model layer for subassembly instead of the subassembly attribute. The reason for that is the subassembly attribute number appears in a lot of places. Let me go back here. This C14 UB2 appears in the part number, right there. So it appears a lot of places. The more interesting piece of information for subassemblies is it a box draw? Is it a base door? Is it a base box? So what I propose is that you use the model layer for subassembly. That's what will appear on the cut list instead of the actual subassembly attribute. And it'll give you one more thing to sort by. Whereas if you use this as the on the cut list, you'll have redundant things to sort by. So I highly recommend using the model layer. Okay, with that, we're done modeling. It's now time to start preparing drawings. And we're going to do that beginning with the next segment. So for now, we're going to close this segment, and I'll see you in segment 4. Have a good day.